Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family. Today on Sue's Healthy Minutes, it's time for another amazing It's the Bread story. I realize that I use the word amazing so much for these stories, but I cannot really find another word that describes each one of them. I truly think they're all amazing, and today is no exception. My guest today is Maddi Kepley. Maddi emailed me a few months ago to share her amazing story with me, and I reached out immediately to ask her to please be my guest on Sue's Healthy Minute. So Maddi, thank you for joining me today. You've got quite a story, so I just want to jump right in. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from?
Yeah, hi, I am Maddi Kepley. I'm a wife of Caleb Kepley and been a wife for 3 years now. I'm a stay-at-home mama to a 15-month-old baby boy, and I have a couple social media gigs that I do from home to pay the grocery bills, and we are from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
That is great. That is great. So you wrote to tell me you had quite a health journey, pretty significant. And I think you even were in college. So why don't you tell everybody the health journey that you've been on? Because it's remarkable.
Yeah, so in college, I was always really into eating healthy. Really, my whole life, I've been eating healthy and trying to do that because I had heart issues when I was a kid. So I think in the back of my mind, I really wanted to work on my body and make sure to treat it well. But in college, I noticed towards the end of college that my thyroid or my neck was swelling up. And I didn't really know what that was. And so I kept asking the Lord what it was. And I felt like God kept calling me to rest. You need to rest your body, Maddi. You need to rest. And honestly, it was kind of a spiritual thing too, because I didn't really know where I stood with God either. I was very nervous about my salvation and whether I was going to end up in heaven or not. And so the Holy Spirit was just whispering to my heart, you need to rest. And not only spiritually, but I felt like he was telling me, you need to rest physically. And I didn't know why. I didn't know why he was telling me to rest. So I wanted to be a missionary. And like I said, I was kind of works based. I really wanted God to like me. I knew that he loved me, but I really wanted to prove that I was a good Christian and that I deserved heaven. But I was rejected to be a missionary after college. And I think that was a big pride check and a big shift of what do I do now? Because that was my whole plan. Well, God knew exactly what he was doing because he closed that door not only for what I didn't know what was going on with my health, but also he wanted me to stay so I could re-meet my future husband and all that. So yeah. I got rejected. It was pretty sad at first. But actually that was 2020, my senior year of college. I actually walked the stage, air quote, walked the stage across my living room, my parents' living room.
Oh gosh, that was COVID year. Yeah.
It was COVID year. So, it was very strange, but, so I was rejected, didn't know what to do. So I asked the Lord, what do you want me to do? And I felt like he was asking me, are you willing to stay at your home, at your parents' home and work at your local church as the kids minister? And so I did. I stayed there. And, during that year, I really sought the Lord, on what next, because I thought I was going to be a missionary. Well, that year, it was a year of rest. I mean, I was living in an apartment with a friend. I would go for long walks with the Lord and ask him about who I was going to marry. And I was asking him like all about my life in the future. And he just kept whispering the same thing: rest your body, work on health. I even went to a counselor that year because 2020 was really hard. And what was crazy is she's a Christian, and I felt like the Lord spoke through her also. She said, I think you need to work on your health, Maddi. Just keep working on your health, and everything will work out. And I really do think that the Lord spoke through her. So, well, I re-met because Caleb and I, we were actually friends. And, but I re-met my husband. So we started hanging out again during that year. And then about 6 months later, we got married. So it was,
wow.
yeah, it was a whirlwind for sure. But it was the best whirlwind ever. And, I always told my friend in college, Elena, that I wanted to learn how to bake bread. So, and she said, Maddi, why don't you just do it? If that's your lifelong goal, just learn how to bake bread. And I just kept putting it off. Finally, the Lord told me, Maddi, you need to not only rest, but you need to rest from your work. And I didn't know what that meant. You need to rest from your work. You need to have a sabbatical year. This was, I think, 2022. I had been working at my local church for 3 years then, and he just was leading me, you need to have a year of rest. And so I did. I quit my job, handed in my resignation, and then right afterward, I found out I was pregnant. And so I was like, oh, that's why God told me to quit my job. I was going to be a stay-at-home mama. So I started baking sourdough. I got introduced to Farmhouse on Boone. But the thing is when I was eating the sourdough, it still would kind of make me swell up, and I didn't really know why, but we kept eating it. But halfway through my sabbatical year, aka year of being pregnant, one of my midwives said, Maddi, since you have thyroid problems, you probably should go get that checked out. I just kept pushing it off.
Yeah.
I didn't, I'm a little bit nervous around doctors, so I didn't want to, I didn't want to have to go to the doctor if I didn't have to. So finally I went to a local doctor. He was just a regular practice doctor, I think at St. Francis. And they looked at my lab work and they said, everything's fine. You're totally fine. Nothing's wrong with your thyroid. It might just be a little bit swollen, and we'll just keep an eye out on it. Your hormones are probably crazy from pregnancy. So I went home really relieved, but my midwife was still like, hey, I have this more holistic doctor, and she treats thyroid problems with home remedies and your diet. And so she helped me with my thyroid problems. Go ahead and check her out. So I did. I went to Dr. Nicole, and she later told me the first time I walked into her office, she saw my thyroid, my neck, and she said, that girl has a problem and she needs to go get it checked out. So she did. She sent me to go get my thyroid scan, an ultrasound done. And then they asked for a biopsy. And then a diagnosis came, and I had papillary cancer. So that was really hard during my first pregnancy.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine the shock of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's crazy is after this, I'm not the only person who has gone through this. So maybe even somebody listening right now has gone through the same thing while pregnant, because a lot of the times women find out during their pregnancy because their hormones are elevated. their thyroids are on overdrive, and then they're like, why is my throat swelling up? And then they go get it checked out, and then they find it that way. But so that was a big shock. But my surgeon, the one who was later going to take it out, he told me, hey, this is the best cancer you could possibly get.
Really?
Because it's easily treated. Now, I am very more on the holistic, team. So I was very, very, very skeptical about taking any organ out before first trying to treat it.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of research about how to treat your thyroid, what I could do personally. The only thing is my cancer was growing very fast because of the elevated hormones because of pregnancy.
Yeah.
And so I prayed so hard. I obsessively sought God on what to do should I take out both sides, both wings, or should I take out one wing of the thyroid, because there's two wings on each side, and only one side showed that I had cancer.
Okay.
So we were praying and we were seeking the Lord on what to do. And finally, I had peace on taking both sides out, even though I was very weary of it, because I felt like that's what the Holy Spirit was leading me to do. And lo and behold, when they took it out, which was a month after Ellis was born. So imagine I delivered Ellis, and then a month later have a huge surgery that, messes up your hormones.
Oh my goodness. What a ordeal to go through with pregnancy and having to be thinking about all of that while you're carrying your very first child. So did you do some natural remedies while you were pregnant with him, waiting to have the surgery after? Because you certainly didn't want to do chemo and radiation while you're pregnant with him, or take the typical allopathic pathway, right?
Yes, correct. So really my options were very limited because I was pregnant. I couldn't fast extremely, which I was going to do. I was going to fast and detox my body. But because I had Ellis living inside me, he needed the nutrients. So that was out of the picture, and doing extreme detoxes with, different substances. I couldn't do that either. So it was the only way that I could really do it was by cutting out literally all sugar. And we went on the anti-candida diet, which is pretty much no gluten at all, no sugar, just veggies, fruits, all natural. And we really did feel great on it. And I do think I did detox a little bit. But it's not very sustainable because you can't, just live on that. Now I know that you probably can live on bread alone. And I'll get to that. So.
You probably can. But and that's one thing I don't think people realize is when you go on any kind of restrictive diet, especially where you're cutting out processed foods, so whether it's the meat, the keto, the paleo, the anti-gluten, whatever, you're cutting out processed foods, but they're not sustainable, and we weren't made to live without grains, that's for sure. But so all right, so you deliver your sweet little boy Ellis, right?
Yes. And then a month later I have a thyroidectomy, and so that was a big crazy ordeal because for about a month I mean, not all ladies are like this, but for about a month, I was in the bed nursing Ellis, recovering because I had an episiotomy that was really hard. And then right after you have your thyroidectomy. And so then I had to recover from that. So it was definitely I know why God was telling me to rest the year before now, because years before, probably 3 or 4 years, the Holy Spirit just is so sweet to be able to say, you need to rest your body.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on with your body, but I do.
Wow.
And, it makes me wonder if if I would have eaten the bread years before, if I would have, fought the cancer before I did. I had to take out my thyroid, but I guess we can't go back and say, what if,
No, no, we
So-
can't. And God leads us, and He was obviously leading you and speaking to you. And I love it that God knows the end from the beginning, and we just need to obey. What a story! So you went through, you had your thyroidectomy, you went through some cancer treatment. I think you even mentioned that you had to be in isolation from your baby for a little bit, so your newborn.
Yes.
Oh man,
Yes.
that must have been hard.
It was so hard. They actually let me wait 5 months so I could breastfeed Ellis for 5 months, and I might cry a little bit. It was so sweet to have that time to be able to breastfeed him, because that was one of my biggest fears about the whole ordeal is, will I be able to still breastfeed Ellis? And they said yes, and so they let me do that for 5 months, and then when he was towards the end of his 5 months, I went into isolation and took a one-time pill called the radioactive iodine pill, and killed off any remaining possible cancer remaining in my neck. And I actually YouTubed, vlogged the whole thing on YouTube. If anybody wants to go see me in isolation on my YouTube channel, just Maddi Kepley. So there's a little plug. But then my last visit, they think I'm cancer free. So yay, God.
Yay! Yay! That's such good news. Yes, that is amazing. And we praise the Lord with you. That's a testimony, just all that you've been through. So I have to ask, how did you hear about Bread Beckers, and where did that come from, and what sold you on the idea? You've already mentioned that you were a pretty healthy eater and into eating healthy. So anyway, tell us how you stumbled on us.
Yeah. So, starting sourdough, I kind of started looking into Farmhouse on Boone is like the recipes I would always go to, and I watch her vlogs. Really, her and one other person online is who I follow. I don't follow a whole lot of people, and you now. I listen to all your podcasts.
Yay! Thank you.
Yay! Yeah. But with her, I saw the title. It says, "This is why I switched to whole grains," and this was in the middle of our anti-candida diet. We had tried sourdough multiple times, so we probably would do it in my pregnancy before we did the anti-candida diet, and then after I had Ellis, I tried it again. But each time I would just feel a little bit swollen. I'd feel fatigued. I'd have a little bit of brain fog.
So you were making sourdough bread, but you were doing it with the commercial white flour.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Even the air quote organic kind, where, and so I said, Caleb, I don't think we're able to eat bread. We both weren't feeling good. So I literally teared up when I threw away my sourdough starter because I said, oh, goodbye. This is the end of an era, but God knew better, because about 3 months later, I can't remember the exact timing, but semi-recently, I think it was in December.
Yeah, that's when I think our episode aired on Farmhouse on Boone. Yes.
Yeah. So I saw the title, it said that I switched to whole grains and this is why. And I was like, I don't even know why I clicked on it, because we're gluten-free. We're not doing any sourdough, but I guess I just still loved it so much that I just wanted to hear what she had to say. And then your talk, right when you said Jesus is the bread of life, and it just makes sense. If Jesus calls himself the bread of life, then why would it be bad for you? I was like, yes, I clapped. I said, yes, that is it. That makes sense. I knew that was the answer, and I knew that it had to be true, because if Jesus calls himself the bread of life, yeah, why would it be bad for you? So
Right. Yeah, that was kind of hit me that way too. I'm like, there's something wrong with this picture.
yeah. So, my husband got me a mill for Christmas, and we were moving, right around Christmas time. So it was in the box until about the middle of January. But the first week we were here, I unboxed that thing. I got it out, and I got my first, the grain, and I put my grain in there, and we had our first loaf of bread. It was actually hard red wheat.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, Caleb, it's going to be a little bit dense because it's hard red. It's not hard white. And so just be prepared that I'll get hard white, but hopefully it'll taste okay. And he took a bite and he was like, Maddie, this is amazing. He's like, this is so fluffy.
Yeah, I love the hard red. I love the flavor. And it might be because that's what I started with, but I was the same way. And we started and it was light and fluffy bread, and the flavor is just so delicious. Yeah. So y'all were sold.
Yes, we were sold. And now I cannot shut up about bread. Like, everybody knows, if I'm hanging out with Maddie, she's probably going to talk about bread. And Caleb calls it being bread pilled, instead of red pilled like the Matrix. I don't know if you know that movie. So he calls it, oh, did you bread pill her? That's what he says.
That's funny. That's funny. So you were a month in, and you saw some pretty significant benefits right away, right?
Yes. So I'm so glad I listened to your podcast about detoxing before I did it, because at the very beginning, I got a bunch of acne around my chin.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's crazy. And I think it was because it was, doing a detox in my body. I've noticed that I have personally lost a little bit of weight from doing the bread. I think mostly it's been inflammation. And I bet you've heard that a lot, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and I think it's the only thing we've changed in our diet. So I think that must be it, because we have a very healthy diet.
Yeah.
So, and then Ellis started pooping very regularly, my baby boy. Yes.
Ellis is your baby. So, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ellis is my baby. And, and they're very he doesn't strain at all. And what's interesting is there was 1 week where we didn't have grain, where we ran out because I was giving it away. So
my goodness.
And Ellis, he actually started straining that week. He's trying to go to the bathroom. That 1 week of not having bread, and he hadn't strained to go to the bathroom at all since bread. So it was very interesting.
That's amazing. So he's like 15 months old now. So he's eating the bread. Yeah.
Yes, he's eating bread.
And he loves it.
Yeah, he's always pointing to the muffins. I want more,
Oh, that is so great. Now, you mentioned a couple of times that when you were doing the sourdough, even with the white flour, that you felt bloated and you had some swelling, but you didn't experience that at all when you started freshly milling, right?
Yeah, no inflammation, no swelling, great bowel movements. Both Caleb and I have been having very regular bowel movements.
Isn't it funny that we tell the world about that?
Yeah, we don't mind. And he used to, Caleb, my husband used to have an energy crash around 3 p.m. at work, and his work is really intense.
Yeah.
And now he does not have a crash at 3 p.m. He is full of energy. We are full until the next meal, and even past the next meal, we are just completely satisfied with the bread. And actually, we saved money last month on our groceries, saved about $80 worth, because we weren't buying to try to fill up, but instead
Right.
we saved money. And we keep a tight budget. So that was really encouraging.
That is, and I get it. It is an investment. The machine is $300. The Wonder Mill. So I understand, but that's interesting. I think you're one of the first to comment on that. But I noticed the same thing. I didn't have to buy as much food. We didn't eat as much. The bread filled us up. And I loved your comment. You said, now I have lots of energy. I feel like my old younger self.
Yes.
Well, you said, I feel like my old self, and I put in parentheses, your younger self.
So true. Well, it is because, before all this thyroid stuff, I've had a lot of energy. I'm a naturally energetic person. And so, to go through all the thyroid things and not feel like myself was really discouraging.
Yes.
And so
yeah.
I think that's why I'm so excited about it, is because I want other people to feel so good and to have energy to detox their body so that they can, be the best version of themselves for other people around them.
Yeah. So I was wondering too, like the detox, I've had a couple other people talk about getting some acne. And I wonder if some of that was pushing out those crazy hormones, that were kind of all over the place during your pregnancy and probably elevated, because I know estrogen's a big player in acne and things like that. So that came to my mind when you were sharing that.
Oh, that's super interesting. Well, I wanted to mention also, I haven't been doing fermented foods other than sourdough with the bread.
Uh-huh.
But I started milk kefir after watching your fermented foods episode.
Uh-huh.
And the week I started, Sue, I noticed, I wanted to talk to you about this. I noticed my neck was feeling swollen, and around my neck, I had these open sores on my neck. Yes. And they were bleeding a little bit. And I think it might be because it was getting the radiation out of my system. What do you think about that?
Wow. No, I'm thinking very possibly. Yes. Yes. And also sometimes people see a rash, and if it's the raised kind of red inflamed, that's pushing the yeast out, the overgrowth of yeast out as well. So it could have been several things, but I'm going to have to look into that. That's very, very interesting. But the sustained energy, I know what you're talking about there. I mean, when we started, I had 5 young children, and I had nursing baby, and homeschooling, and, you're tired and you crash after lunch. And that was a huge benefit that I noticed right away, is when we started doing the bread. I mean, the first week, it was like, wow, I'm not crashing after lunch. I can actually listen to the first grader read, without falling asleep. And so that's so funny that I'm excited for you that you found good health, that you're cancer free, that you and your husband both have found this great energy. That's a biggie that people don't understand. The refined carbohydrates, they pump your energy up and then they drop you down really fast. So that's where those crashes are coming from. But the complex carbohydrates digested slowly, releases the good sugar in your body that your body needs for energy. And it's just this sustained energy all day long. So I love that you mentioned that you're excited, that you're feeding your family good food. And I know that was a real benefit for me that I don't talk about a lot, but it felt so good to put this bread on the table and go, this is the best food you could possibly be eating, And not to mention, like I said, I always say it is not only nourishing, but it is delicious.
Yeah. And I feel like that is so satisfying to make something with your hands. It's almost kind of primitive. Like it's kind of going back to our ancestors, and you feel like you're tapping into something that God has wanted us to do forever. Yeah. And it's very satisfying to make something. And then, what better thing to make than to make food for people, that are satisfied and are like, oh, this is so good. I actually have a couple more testimonies about about the bread. It's like a long list, Sue. It's changed our life.
No, it's okay, because I was going to say, when you first wrote to me, it had only been a month. So I was going to say, okay, now it's been a few months. Are there any other benefits that you've seen? So just go with it. Share those testimonies.
Okay. So Caleb, my husband, has had allergies his whole life. Every springtime, he has allergies. And for 3 years now, he's been keeping a roll of toilet paper everywhere he goes. Roll of toilet paper by the bed, on his piano, just everywhere, because, that's what we use as tissues, in his car, even on his desk at work. This year, after eating bread, I said, Caleb, you haven't been blowing your nose. Like, where are the rolls of toilet paper? And he's
that are everywhere, usually everywhere.
Yeah, usually every spring you have a roll of toilet paper, everything. And he just blows and blows. And he's like, you're right. I haven't been blowing my nose. And it's because of the bread.
That is so great. 3 months in and allergy season now. So my goodness, that is so great.
Yes. And that's something he's lived with his whole life,
Yeah.
And so that's just such a blessing. And, my thyroidectomy, I have a big scar on my neck. And I think because of the vitamin E in the wheat berries, it's almost completely gone. You can hardly see it.
That is amazing. Yes, I absolutely believe that. The vitamin E. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I tell people I've been at this 34 years is when I started milling and making bread. And I started studying because, the more I studied, the more benefits I saw. I would study to find out, how is the bread helping this? And even today, 34 years later, I am still amazed at the things that I learn that the bread can help with. And of all my years of studying, I have never seen any one food bring so many varying health benefits to people. I mean, who would think changing your bread would help with your husband's seasonal allergies? Who would think that? Y'all were eating clean, very clean.
Very clean.
Who would know that? Who would think that? But, and I think that's why the scripture, when Jesus says, I am the real bread of life, and the rest of that, John 6:35, it says, I am the real bread of life. He who comes to me shall be satisfied. And I think that's what caught my attention more than anything. Not only did Jesus compare himself to bread, but he talked about bread being satisfying, because that's what he was comparing himself to. And it just satisfies on so many levels, not just being delicious and filling you up, but nutritionally just gives your body what you need for health and wellness and just to be able to live your life.
That is so good. That is so good, Sue. I was just thinking about how, the Lord was leading me to rest.
Yeah.
And how I really struggled with, my standing with God. But now I have found rest in Christ because of his sacrifice and because of what he has done and his righteousness in my place. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I really feel like it's cool because the Lord, I think, has brought me kind of in a full circle. My story is very spiritual, but it's also very physical. And I think both of them have kind of tied hand in hand, both my spiritual and my physical health. And so anyway, you just saying that just kind of, put a light bulb on me that I think the Lord has been teaching me spiritual truths through the physical, so it's really amazing. And what better way to teach me than to teach me through, bread, the bread of life,
Yes. And, I think too often we make the mistake of trying to separate the physical from the spiritual. We are physical beings. Yes, we are, but we are spiritual beings as well. And they're connected. They're very, very connected. And we have to look at both, and God gives us wisdom for both.
Yeah, I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
I've heard you mention it. Maybe you have a full podcast on it and I haven't gotten there yet. But do you think spiritual things affect your physical, like specifically in cancer? Like I was so fearful for years and years and years. And do you think that might have been a cause of radicals going on in my body?
I absolutely think there are spiritual roots to disease. If you listen to my testimony, not by bread alone, that is my cancer story. I should have never gotten colorectal cancer physically, should have never. And yet I did. It definitely was a spiritual journey. And I shared in a recent podcast testimony of a young girl I prayed for in Tanzania. She couldn't walk. They carried her in and she couldn't walk. We prayed for her. God gave me a word for her that people were gossiping about her, and she confirmed. And she got up and walked. She limped with a very distinct limp and was still in pain. The end of the week, I prayed for her again and asked the Lord to show us. And he showed me that she had a fear that God would leave her and forsake her. She was afraid. And we just prayed against that and spoke truth over her. And within 10 minutes, she was jumping, walking, running down the road, singing. We never prayed for her healing. We just prayed for deliverance.
Wow.
That. So yeah, I'm a firm believer that we need to look at the spiritual. Now, I've seen people that do talk about spiritual roots of disease, and they go completely to that end, that it's always spiritual.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've seen someone's cholesterol drop 85 points in a month and all they changed was the bread, So was that a spiritual?
Yes.
So there's physical and there's spiritual. We can't always separate them. I think they're connected more than we would ever know. I'm reading a book right now on emotions, and it's pretty powerful. It's pretty powerful. But yes, I'm a firm believer that our spiritual, emotional roots can affect us physically. I mean, just think about when you get nervous. So nervousness is emotion. What, your stomach gets upset, you go to the bathroom a lot, that's affecting us physically. So I don't see how anybody could deny that it does affect you physically. But I'm just so happy to talk to you. I loved hearing the spiritual part of your journey. And I love how God tenderly led you to rest, to prepare you for what He knew. He knew what was coming. And I love your story. I think it is truly amazing. So unless you have any other testimonies or benefits to share, we'll close out. But before we do, I just want to give you the opportunity to share any final words of encouragement that you want to leave with everyone listening today.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I think milling your own bread and taking care of your body is probably the most selfless thing that you could do. It's not selfish at all because it not only benefits yourself, but also benefits those around you, your friends and your family. And you can be more like Christ through it. You can feel better and your emotions are going to feel better. You're going to just be a better version of yourself until we see God face to face with our new bodies. So I really think that's kind of what the Lord has been showing me, is that because I've been focusing so much on bread that I've been asking God, is this too much? Like, am I kind of making this air quote an idol? And I feel like He's been like, no, this is a good thing.
This is real. Yeah. And I love that you share it with others. And, it brings to mind a scripture when the crowds kept following Him, everywhere He went. And He said to them, He said, I tell you the truth. You were seeking me not because of the miracles that you saw, but because you had the bread and you were satisfied. I just love that verse. And so I think sharing real bread, physical bread, freshly milled bread with others is an open door to share Jesus with others, the real bread of life, the gospel, because people are hungry, they are sick. And I love what you just said about taking care of our body sometimes can appear selfish because it's kind of thinking about ourselves, but it really is selfless. What comes to my mind when you're on a flight and they tell you in an emergency that, the oxygen masks are going to drop, and it says, put your oxygen mask on first before you attempt to help someone else. And why is that? It's so that you'll be healthy, strong, you won't pass out, you'll be able to help someone else. And I never thought about that, but taking care of yourself, eating healthy food, eating real bread, that is a selfless act. because you want to be the healthiest wife and mother and servant of Jesus Christ that you can be. I love that. I thank you for kind of putting that thought in my mind.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. I've really enjoyed this, Sue. And hey, I just wanted to put another shameless plug. My husband Caleb, he's Caleb Kepley. He has an instrumental album online, and it's the gospel. So if anybody wants to go check it out, it's just type in Caleb Kepley album, and it'll come up. So I just wanted to mention it, and it's all Christian. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try to put links of that in the podcast notes. And then so it's Caleb Kepley, Kepley, and then yours, Maddi, Maddi, and then Kepley. And we can find you on YouTube as well.
Yes, that'd be great. For anybody who needs a testimonial vlog about our AI treatment, I think that's probably, I know I kept looking for YouTube videos about it, and some of them were helpful, but some of them, there's not very much information about what actually goes into the week of radioactive iodine, and like how far do you need to stay away from somebody. And there's just like a lot of information floating around that you're like, what's real, what's not. And so I made a video about it. So hopefully that'll be helpful.
Oh, that is wonderful. And I know that will be an encouragement to other people. So Maddi, thank you so much for reaching out to me. And you actually had to email me. I don't check podcast comments. Tiffany does, my producer, and she's real good about sharing with me, but I missed yours. And so I'm glad that you emailed and said, in case you missed it. So I'm so glad that you reached out again. And what a journey you have had spiritually and physically. And yours truly is, like I said, an amazing story. I can't find another word to describe it. And I'm so happy for you and your young family. And I just want to thank you for joining me, and thank you now to everyone listening today, and maybe share today's episode with someone who needs some hope and encouragement. And so until next time, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated, located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.